British economic interests in India began in the 1600s, when the British East India Company set up trading posts at Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. The British government regulated the East India Company's efforts both in London and in India. Until the beginning of the 19th century, the company ruled India with little interference from the British government. The company even had its own army, led by British officers and staffed by sepoys, or Indian soldiers. At first, India was treasured by the British more for its potential than its actual profit. Thanks to the Industrial Revolution, England had become the world's leader in economic activity, and India was the best supplier of raw materials for England. Its 300 million people were also a large potential market for British goods. The British considered India the jewel in the crown, the most valuable of all of their colonies. The British set up restrictions that prevented the Indian economy from operating on its own. British policies called for India to produce raw materials for British manufacturing and to buy British goods. India became economically valuable only after the British established a railroad network. Railroads transported raw products from the interior to the ports and manufactured goods back again. The majority of the raw materials were agricultural products produced on plantations. Plantation crops included tea, indigo, coffee, and cotton. The British held much of the political and economic power. This had both negative and positive impacts on India. The negative impacts were the loss of self-sufficiency of the Indian people, famine among communities, and the racist attitudes of British officials. However, the British also had positive impacts on Indian life. These impacts included the improvement of technological products consisting of railroad systems, communication systems, dams, and bridges. Sanitation and public health also improved, and schools and colleges were founded. As economic problems increased for Indians, so did their feelings of resentment and nationalism. In 1857, gossip spread among the sepoys, the Indian soldiers, that the cartridges of their new Enfield rifles were sealed with beef and pork fat. To use the cartridges, soldiers had to bite off the seal. Both Hindus who considered the cow sacred and Muslims who do not eat pork were outraged by the news. Sepoys refused to accept the cartridges, and many were jailed for disobeying orders. Soon sepoys and Indians rallied with each other to protest against the British. This is known as the Sepoy Mutiny. Protests soon became outright war, as the sepoys and the British tried to slaughter each other's armies. However, the Indians could not unite against the British because some Indians remained loyal to the British Crown. The mutiny marked a turning point in Indian history as the British took direct command of India. This time period in Indian history is known as the Raj. It lasted from 1757 to 1947. The Sepoy Mutiny and the resulting British control of the country fueled the distrust between the Indians and England. In the early 1800s, some Indians began demanding more modernization and a greater role in governing themselves. Ram Mohan Roy, a modern-thinking, well-educated Indian, began a campaign to move India away from the traditional practices and ideas. Besides modernization and westernization, nationalist feelings started to surface in India. Indians resented a system that made them second-class citizens in their own country. A spirit of Indian nationalism led to the founding of two nationalist groups, the Indian National Congress in 1885 and the Muslim League in 1906. At first, such groups concentrated on specific concerns for Indians. Gradually, their demands broadened. By the early 1900s, they were calling for self-government. Nationalists were further inflamed in 1905 by the partition of Bengal. The province was so large that the British divided it into a Hindu section and a Muslim section. In 1911, yielding to the pressure, the British took back the order and divided the province in a different way.